Today we are told to manifest, to want, to visualize, to demand. But ancient Africans never begged the universe. They listened to it. Africans did not manifest outcomes. They aligned with forces already in motion. Before words like manifestation existed, there was alignment. And Africa mastered it. Before desire learned how to speak, before intention learned how to ask, there was a deeper language, one spoken by the earth itself, a language of rhythm, timing, and position. Long before people were taught to want from the universe, they learned how to stand correctly within it. Today, the world is filled with voices telling us to manifest, to visualize harder, to demand abundance, to pull reality toward us through will alone. But ancient Africans never chased outcomes. They did not bargain with the unseen. They did not shout affirmations into the sky. Instead, they listened, quietly, patiently, to forces already moving. In the villages, no one asked the universe for permission. The farmer did not manifest rain. He read the clouds, the winds, the insects, the silence before the storm. The drummer did not call spirits by force. His hands found the rhythm that already existed. The hunter did not demand success. He waited until his body, the forest, and the moment agreed. This was not superstition. It was intelligence. A precise understanding that the universe responds not to desire, but to alignment. That power does not come from wanting more, but from becoming positioned correctly within what already is. Africa understood something modern language forgot. When you are out of rhythm, nothing answers you. When you are in harmony, nothing resists you. This is why ancient African wisdom spoke less about attraction and more about balance, less about intention and more about order. Life was not something to be controlled. It was something to be entered, like a river whose current could carry you if you stepped in at the right place. And here is the question few dare to ask today. What if manifestation feels exhausting because it was never meant to be forced? What if the universe is not waiting for your request, but for your alignment? Before sacred words were written, before philosophies were named, before desire learned how to shout, there was a quieter truth, one Africa mastered long ago. This is the African law of manifestation. And it was never about wanting. It was about alignment. Modern thought teaches that reality bends to desire. That if the mind focuses long enough, speaks loudly enough, or believes hard enough, the universe will respond. In this worldview, wanting becomes power. Intention becomes a command. And the world is something to be persuaded. But ancient Africa operated under a different law entirely. A quieter, older law. One that did not begin with desire, but with position. Not with asking, but with becoming. To align meant to place oneself correctly within the order of existence. Just as rivers do not argue with gravity, and birds do not negotiate with the wind, humans were expected to find their proper place within the rhythm of life. Nothing was pulled toward them. They moved until resistance disappeared. Desire in this worldview was not celebrated, it was examined. Too much wanting signaled imbalance. It meant the individual had stepped out of rhythm with time, community, or nature itself. The solution was never to want harder, but to realign. This is why African societies emphasize timing over speed. You planted when the earth was ready, not when impatience demanded. You spoke when silence had done its work. You acted only when signs, natural, communal, spiritual, agreed. Power came not from urgency, but from precision. Modern manifestation teaches attraction. African alignment taught harmony. One seeks to pull reality inward. The other dissolves friction by moving correctly. One exhausts the mind. The other steadies the body. One asks, "How do I get?" The other asks, Where do I belong? When alignment was achieved, outcomes followed effortlessly. Harvests came, conflicts softened, journeys succeeded. Not because the universe was convinced, but because resistance had vanished. And this is the distinction that changes everything. In African wisdom, the universe was never something to conquer. It was something to cooperate with. To understand how this cooperation worked, one must first understand the invisible structure that governed all things, the law of cosmic order that Africans lived by, long before it had a name. To the ancient African mind, the universe was not chaotic. It was not random, emotional, or impulsive. It was structured, alive with pattern, balance, and sequence. Every event belonged to a larger rhythm, and every life had a place within it. Nothing existed in isolation. The sky spoke to the earth. The ancestors moved through the present. The living stood between what had been and what was becoming. This was not philosophy. It was observation, refined over thousands of years of watching seasons, stars, births, deaths, and returns. Cosmic order was understood through cycles. Day followed night, rain followed drought, growth followed rest. Even conflict had its season, just as peace did. To interrupt these cycles was to invite resistance. To respect them was to unlock flow. This is why African wisdom valued timing above intention. Acting too early was as dangerous as acting too late. Power did not belong to those who rushed forward, but to those who waited until the moment opened. Silence was not emptiness, it was preparation. Within this worldview, destiny was not a fixed destination, nor a wish waiting to be fulfilled. It was a pathway. And alignment meant recognizing when you were on that path and when you had stepped off it. Elders did not ask, "What do you want to be?" They asked, "What are you called to carry?" Because calling was discovered, not declared. It emerged through observation, correction, and lived experience. When imbalance appeared, through illness, misfortune, or conflict, it was never seen as punishment. It was a signal. Something had drifted. A rhythm had been broken. The response was not blame, but restoration. This is why rituals existed. Not to impress spirits, not to force outcomes, but to recalibrate human life back into harmony with forces larger than the self. The universe in African thought did not reward ambition. It responded to alignment. And alignment did not begin with thoughts or words. It began much closer to the earth. It began in the body. Before Africans spoke alignment, they lived it. Before they named harmony, they moved within it. The body was the first language through which the universe was understood, and rhythm was its grammar. Every movement carried meaning. Feet touching the ground were not just steps, they were conversations with the earth. Hands striking drums were not performances, they were calibrations. Breath, posture, motion, and stillness were all ways of tuning the human body to the larger forces surrounding it. This is why African spirituality was never confined to thought alone. Alignment did not begin in the mind because the mind could deceive itself. The body could not. When the body resisted, something was wrong. When it flowed, the universe had agreed. Work itself became a form of alignment. Farming was done in rhythm, guided by songs that synchronized breath and movement. These were not songs of entertainment. They were tools that regulated energy, endurance, and focus. Labor became ceremony. Ceremony became balance. Dance served a similar purpose. It was not random expression, but structured movement shaped by ancestral memory. Each step mirrored natural forces: wind, water, animals, cycles of birth and return. Through dance, the body remembered what the mind had forgotten. Drumming unified it all. The drum was a bridge between the physical and the unseen. Its rhythms matched heartbeats, seasons, and collective emotion. When drums spoke, bodies responded. When bodies aligned, communities stabilized. This was alignment in its purest form, not imagined, not visualized, felt, practiced, repeated until harmony became instinct. And because the body was the first instrument, alignment was never private. It was shared, synchronized, and reinforced by others moving to the same rhythm, which is why African power was never individual. It was collective. In African societies, no one aligned alone. Harmony was not a personal achievement. It was a communal responsibility. The rhythm of one life affected the rhythm of all. An imbalance in a single person echoed through the village like a missed beat in a drum circle. This is why alignment was practiced together. Decisions were made in councils, not in isolation. Elders listened before they spoke. Youth observed before they acted. Wisdom was not owned, it was circulated. When the community moved as one, outcomes unfolded naturally. Success was not measured by accumulation, but by stability. A prosperous village was not one with the most wealth, but one where hunger was rare. Conflict was contained, and everyone knew their role. No one needed to manifest abundance because abundance emerged from cooperation. Rituals reinforced this unity. Planting seasons began together. Initiations marked shared transitions. Healing ceremonies addressed not only the individual, but the relationships surrounding them. When one person fell out of rhythm, the community adjusted through counsel, correction, or care. This collective alignment created resilience. When drought came, food was shared. When conflict arose, mediation followed. The goal was never to elevate one above the rest, but to restore balance for all. Individualism, as understood today, would have felt dangerous in such a system. To pursue personal gain at the expense of harmony was to weaken the whole. Desire that ignored community was seen not as ambition, but as disconnection. This is why African societies produced continuity rather than extremes. They generated order, not excess. Stability, not spectacle. But when alignment fractured, when rhythm broke and balance slipped, the consequences were felt deeply. And restoring harmony required understanding what had gone wrong. This is where African wisdom turned to diagnosis rather than blame. When misfortune appeared in African societies, it was not met with panic or shame. It was met with attention. Something had shifted, a rhythm had been disturbed. The question was never who is at fault, but what has fallen out of balance. Illness was not immediately seen as an enemy to be fought. It was a message to be interpreted. Conflict was not simply punished. It was traced back to its point of disruption. Even drought was read as a sign that the relationship between people, land, and time needed repair. This is where divination played its role. Not as prediction, but as diagnosis. It was a way of listening, deeply and symbolically, to where alignment had weakened. The symbols cast were not answers in themselves, they were mirrors reflecting imbalance. Restoration followed understanding. Rituals were performed not to beg for relief, but to realign behavior, intention, and relationship. Sometimes this meant apology, sometimes restitution, sometimes rest. Healing was not dramatic, it was precise. What mattered most was responsibility. Alignment demanded honesty. If someone acted out of rhythm, they were corrected, not to shame them, but to protect the whole. Correction was care. Silence was guidance. Separation when needed was medicine. This worldview removed the fear of failure. Nothing was permanent. Balance could always be restored. The universe was not angry, it was responsive. The most powerful question was never, why is this happening to me? It was, where did I drift? But this language of balance, rhythm, and restoration would not remain untouched. As the world shifted, so did the way humans spoke about power, and with that shift, alignment began to fade, replaced by a new idea altogether. As African societies were disrupted, the language of power changed. Communal rhythms fractured. Sacred timing was replaced by urgency. What had once been lived collectively began to dissolve into individual struggle. Colonial intrusion did more than alter borders. It disrupted cosmologies. Systems built on balance were dismissed as primitive. Rituals rooted in restoration were misunderstood or erased. In their place came new narratives: speed over timing, control over cooperation, possession over position. Over time, fragments of ancient wisdom survived, but detached from their original context. Ideas about intention, energy, and influence were lifted from older traditions and reshaped into personal tools. Alignment became attraction. Harmony became desire. The river was no longer entered, it was commanded. This shift made power feel personal but heavy. Individuals were told that success depended solely on belief and effort. When outcomes failed to appear, the fault felt internal. The burden of alignment was replaced by pressure to perform. Modern life amplified this strain. Faster cycles, shorter patience, endless comparison. The body, once the first instrument, was ignored. Community, once the stabilizer, became optional. Silence disappeared, and yet something always felt missing. Manifestation promised control but delivered exhaustion. Desire multiplied but fulfillment stayed distant. The universe felt unresponsive, not because it had changed, but because the method had. What if the ancient law was never wrong, only misunderstood? What if force replaced flow and noise replaced rhythm? The wisdom of alignment was not destroyed. It was simply buried beneath new language. And buried things, when remembered, have a way of returning. The ancient law was never lost. It waited quietly, beneath the noise of wanting, beneath the pressure to force outcomes, beneath the belief that life must be wrestled into submission. Alignment does not disappear. It withdraws until it is respected again. To return to alignment is not to abandon ambition, but to soften urgency. It is to listen before acting, to notice cycles instead of fighting them, to recognize when effort feels heavy, not because you are weak, but because the moment is not open. African wisdom teaches that life responds when resistance ends, when the body is rested, when timing is honored, when relationships are repaired, when movement flows from rhythm rather than desperation. Alignment is not mystical, it is practical. It is intelligence applied patiently. This return begins quietly, in how you breathe, in how you move through your day, in how you respect your limits and recognize your seasons. Alignment is not about adding more, it is about removing friction. When people realign, communities stabilize. When communities stabilize, abundance follows naturally, not dramatic, not overnight, but sustainably, like rain that returns when the land is ready. The universe does not respond to noise, it responds to harmony. Africa understood this long before it had a name, long before words like manifestation existed. Power was never summoned, it was met halfway. And perhaps the question today is not how to manifest more, but how to return to rhythm, how to listen again, how to stand where resistance disappears. If this awakened something ancient in you, carry it gently. Share it not to convince, but to remember. Comment: I choose alignment. Subscribe to Deep in History, where forgotten wisdom finds its rhythm again.